Well, the new summer event for 2026 has been released, and oh man, it's another batch for amazing servants, both gameplay wise and their artworks. Especially the summer version for Beni-Enma, where she is equipped with very interesting kit. You would assume that it's not possible if Geo has reached this limit and all they would do is recycle simple kit. Yeah, never mind. What is this shit? We have our first summer servant for this year, that being Summer Beni-Enma, which, knowing how she is one of the most popular servants, is no wonder why she got this amazing treatment from the devs. Summer Beni-Enma is an arts berserker with AoE NPs, mostly focusing on her damage, with multi-core capabilities on the side. But before we can start talking about Summer Beni-Enma's kit, we have to address the elephant in the room, that being the fullness gauge she and others have right next to their HP and NP. This gauge is used with her skills and NP for either increasing/decreasing this fullness gauge and getting additional benefits from it. This gauge has max stacks of 4 usually, but when the servant has the super large trait, which are these servants currently, they have an increased maximum stack of 8 instead of 4. How does this affect the gameplay? Well, when you attacking enemies, the fullness gauge gets reduced by 1 for attacking servant. Even when the attack is AoE, it only slashes the gauge once, so you wouldn't have to worry about Olga or Alko or any of the AoE servants in the game. Note that this stack would additionally go down by 1 if you crit against the enemy. As I've said before, this gauge gets increased/decreased depending on which skill or NP you would use, which let's talk about that right now. Summer Beni-Enma's first skill is where do we start? Let's first mention that this skill has an insane low cooldown of 1. This is due to this skill being designed to be used multiple times in the battle, and the uniqueness of this skill is that it tracks how many times the skill itself has been used, and depending on how many times you've pressed it before, the effect would change accordingly. With all the skill presses, regardless of how many times you've used it before, you would always gain 30 stars and increase the fullness gauge by 2, and additional effects are added if the servant successfully increases their fullness gauge. First use gives party-wide attack up by 20% for 3 turns. Second is party-wide max HP increase for 3 turns. Third, party-wide NP charge by 20%. Fourth, party-wide NP damage up by 20%. Fifth, party-wide critical damage increase by 30% for 3 turns. And lastly, sixth skill gives party-wide heal for 10,000 HP. Couple of things to note here. 1, that additional effects would not apply to the servant if they are already full on their fullness gauge. And 2, that after the 6th skill use, the skill count goes back to 1. And after that, it starts repeating from 1, 2, all the way up to 6. There's also a chance that all of these effects from 1 through 6 apply on the first skill use. However, it's very unlikely to happen, so just ignore it for the time being. Her second skill is self-arts and buster up by 30% for 3 turns, increasing the critical damage up by 50% for 3 turns, and apply 3 times 3 turns of aid to self with the cost of reducing fullness gauge by 2. Summer Enma's third skill is an NP damage up by 20% for 3 turns, high chance to apply death when you using NP for 3 turns, and charge her NP up by 50%. If your fullness gauge is at 0, you would additionally increase your NP damage up by 20% for 3 turns. Her passives are decent to say the least. Anti-magic, independent action, and present concealment does the usual stuff. Ventriculism applies immunity to skill seal, so that is very good. And Friend of the Stray House, that does the whole gauge mechanics. Summer Beni's Noble Phantasm is arts AoE that applies anti-undead for 1 turn, deals anti-evil power mod damage, then increase the max stack of fullness by 4, but cannot overshoot above 8. Increase the max HP, charge 10% NP gauge, and cleanses, burns, curses, and poisons, while also removing defensive debuffs to an entire party. Her damage is quite good, with self-buff damage coming in around 64,000 mark. If 4th use of first skill was used, then 73,000. 1 evil anti-mod for 110,000. and 145,000 for double power mods. Very great numbers even compared to units like Lohi or Ibuki. So how should you use Summer Beni-Enma? Well, it's quite easy actually. You would want to spam your skill 1 in order for you and your teammates to gain beneficial buffs, going from 20% attack, 20% MP gain, and 20% damage up. However, you must manage this without overcapping on the gauge limit, or else the buff would not land. This is where the effects on MP comes into play, as max stacks being at 8 means you can use skill 1 4 times without causing any problems. Just by activating skill 1, skill 2, and skill 3, you can get the full effectiveness of skill 3, but make sure that skill 3 is used at the start or after skill 1, then skill 2. If you have skill cooldown servant or master equipment, then use it now. Then press the skill 1 as that gets cooled down by entering into the new waves. Just like that, it's quite simple when you know how her kit works, huh? So what is Summer Emma's pros and cons? Pros are 1, she has an anti-mod, and it's evil, which is fairly common of all things considered, so dishing out damage against them is not a problem. 2, her self multipliers are quite high, 90% self buff when you do not consider skill 1, and 110% when you play things right. And 3, team-wide 20% attack up and MP damage up while charging their gauge by 20 to 30% is crazy good, even surpassing Lohi in this regard. 4, self 50% charge and 20% charge for an entire party, so she basically has 70% battery with 10% refunds on NP, which never could go wrong. Another point is not as important, but basically generating 30 stars per turn is pure insanity, and mixing her into crit farming comp might not be that bad of an idea. Now cons. She wants to unlock her append skills really bad, most notably skill 2 for that 20% additional starting NP gauge, and append skill 5 for recasting her skill 1. Without it, you can't easily use skill 1 4 times to get that NP damage up for the entire party. You could still do it with units like Uruz or Summer Ibuki, but it is going to be extremely hard without slotting them in place. She really wants to be casting her NP first as well, not only for that 10% NP region, but also increasing the max cap on the stacking gauge, which again restricts your team building. With all things considered, she is a broken character if you know what you are doing, and even if you don't, she is as good as the one of the most powerful berserkers in the game. This unit is probably a pickup for most, at least I think so, but let me know in the comments below.
月見原を